I'm probably not the top GP in this world, nor the top university professor, but I am a practicing GP who enjoys teaching as a secondary activity. And by all accounts, I'm not bad at it. Coming up. Okay, so one thing I'd like to consider is who needs to take private equity courses. And in my experience, we've got three broad segments. So one group would be fund managers themselves. So you might have a GP, who maybe a recently formed GP or a GP who's recently hired quite a few people. And often they will send some of their more junior people or their mid-level people to a course. Sometimes everybody will go as also as a function of a form of team building. So we've got GPs. We've also got other types of private equity investors who are not GPs, like sovereign wealth funds or the banks who may have a private equity group within, or other types of financial institutions. And what they'll do is they may send their team to get some refreshment on private equity. And then we've got people who want to break into private equity from a related sector. And there's really three levels. There's the more junior person who's got maybe some background in investment banking or accounting or consulting who wants to move into private equity. That's one group. The other group is maybe somebody in mid-career who wants to acquire more knowledge about private equity so they can try and go and raise their own fund or join a fund. And then a later stage executive who's maybe working with a private equity fund as an operating partner and wants to really just understand a bit better the way of thinking of the private equity fund with whom he or she is cooperating. And then beyond that, you've also got service providers like law firms, accountants and others who also may benefit from private equity firms, along with regulators and others. So quite a wide gamut of people. And it's really a question of choosing the right course that would be suitable for them. So it's always interesting to know, one person's track record. So as an instructor, who have I taught? Well, I've taught various types of institutions. So maybe let's have a look at all four. Well, the first group that I've taught is GPs themselves, particularly in emerging markets. So what I've done there is I've sat down with the whole teams and maybe we've done a kind of intensive course, maybe focusing specifically on an area where they would like to boost their knowledge, maybe portfolio management or exits. And here you can see here on the screen some examples of GPs that I've worked with in the past. The second group is sovereign wealth funds. These are typically either LPs in private equity fund managers or co-investors, and they typically would have their own direct investment team as well. And so I would typically have taught the private equity investment group within the sovereign wealth fund, plus other members of staff who may be coming into contact with the P group and want to understand a little bit better what they've done. As you can see from the logos here, it's been mostly in the Middle East and Asia where I've had the most experience of working with sovereign wealth funds. Last category, no, third category rather, is developmental financial institutions as well as government. DFIs are a big feature of the emerging markets private equity world. And here you can see some of the main names which I've worked for. I could point, for example, to EBRD, where I was for 3 years the in-house instructor teaching all EBRD bankers about private equity. Others include African Development Bank, the European Commission, Islamic Development Bank, Nigerian Securities and Exchange Commission, and various others. The fourth category is banks, corporates, and other different institutional investors. And these are interested in private equity because they may have their own team within private equity. One example is I did a course for MIS in Sri Lanka where they had a venture team. And so there'll be different motivations for these investors, but I've got plenty of experience of working with all of these. So in the table that you can see above, I'm listing the 9 main courses that I'm offering. And so they're all slightly different and address to different audiences. So you've got firstly the 3-day and 5-day foundation courses, which are kind of entry-level courses which cover the whole range of private equity. And then you've got the 2 overview courses of 1 and 2 days, which are more managerial type courses, which are designed to give an overview of private equity to people who are not working in private equity, but just would simply like to get a general sense of what it's all about without necessarily pursuing it. Then we have the specialized courses, which would come into for people who are more involved in private equity. And one specialized course is for deal making and negotiation. The second one is for monitoring the portfolio, and the third one is regarding exits. Then following that, we've got the 4-day online course, which is specifically designed to be delivered online. And finally, we've got the soft skills course and pitching course, which is a course very much focused on pitching and developing soft skills in private equity, which can be sometimes overlooked. So that was a brief summary of the course types, and in the next few sections I talk in much more detail about the course, the methodology, each course individually. So if you want to jump through directly to the conclusions, go to the minutes indicated here on the screen, and then maybe come back to that another time when you have more time. I'd like to say a few words about certification and my competition, just a few words. So my courses are all certified by the UK Continuous Professional Development Institute, which means that anyone attending my courses will get a certificate and they can apply credits towards, for example, a CFA or postgraduate degree or some other kind of professional qualification that they're doing. So all my courses are fully accredited. Who are my competitors? Well, I've got basically universities doing postgraduate and ad hoc courses and training companies. So why do I think I may offer something more than them? Well, as far as universities are concerned, they tend to offer courses from academics. So these are people who may have a great wide knowledge of private equity, but sort of a bit from 30,000 feet without really getting into having lived through the nuts and bolts of it. So the courses tend to be a little bit high level and a little bit theoretical. They'll often bring in private equity fund managers as kind of guest speakers and the like, but these guys are not qualified teachers, so they'll tend to just sort of talk about what they do, for a brief 40-minute period without really giving you a didactic experience. So these university level courses are a bit theoretical, but if you do want to get, for CV purposes, a university branded certificate, obviously that's the way to go for you. Regarding training companies, well, it's a slightly different story. Training companies obviously are more focused on doing tailored, customized training for companies and the like. But if you do hire a training company, they normally work by using subcontractors just like me. So if you were to look for a course with a training company, the chances are you might end up with me because I'm a subcontractor to several training companies. Okay, so I'd like to talk a bit about the methodology of my courses. So each course is divided into a 90-minute module, which is more or less self-contained. So if you miss part of one day, you're going to still be able to follow what's going on next because, sometimes people are busy, they get called away. So in that sense, I try and make it very practical. So it's a 90-minute module. So each course will have 4 90-minute modules during the day. And then within the module, typically what we have is we have the first part of the module where I talk about the topic with the aid of some PowerPoint slides. And then for the second part of the module, we do an exercise which helps us cement and reinforce the concept taught. And these are very practical cases and exercises which I've developed and written myself based upon real life experience. So compared to university type case studies, they're much more nuts and bolts, going into the guts, so that you've actually got actionable experience that you can use in your career. And then finally, at the end of each of the talks, I give some links to some YouTube videos which I pre-recorded, which can repeat the topic in case people want to sort of refresh it and revise it one more time. And I find that that's a good combination. Each module self-contained, 4 a day, gives you the information in the right way. So I'm going to start here by discussing the 5-day foundation course, and we'll be discussing all of the 9 courses in detail. So if you do want to skip this section, you can go to the section in the time indicated below and jump this part, maybe come back to it later if you want. So this course here, it's 3 days, and it's an overview of the whole cycle of private equity, and so it more or less follows the investment cycle. So finding deals, then processing deals, managing the portfolio, and then exiting the deals. And some of the important building blocks are things like due diligence, putting together term sheets. There's a bit about managing the portfolio and exits. And the part that sort of brings it all together is a simulation exercise, which is a negotiation role play, which happens on the afternoon of the second day. The 5-day foundation course is similar to the 3-day one, but it's at a slightly slower pace, and it's probably more suited to people a little bit more junior than for the 3-day foundation, which is a lot more intense. And so the 5-day course covers the same ground as the 3-day course, but in a bit more detail. And we also have 2 negotiation role plays, which allows the attendants to switch roles between the entrepreneur and the fund, and so to see it from both perspectives. And there's a few more basic exercises. So this is a kind of very good 5-day, very complete foundation course for anybody who wants to get a good overview of private equity and has the time to do for the full 5 days. This course here is the overview course, which is a perfect course to give someone like more senior managers a general idea of what private equity is all about. For example, I once gave this course to a group of officials from the European Commission. At the time they were planning to write the new Alternative Fund Managers Directive, and this gave them some help just to understand what it's all about and to sort of basically demystify it. And so it's in basically 4 sections. The first section is an introduction to the industry, so a kind of overview of the industry. The second section discusses the main subsets of private equity, so venture, growth, mezzanine. The third section talks a little bit about the guts of how private equity funds actually make their investments. And the last section talks more about fundraising and the general risk management perspective in private equity. So it's a very good 1-day nutshell course for an overview for sort of managerial people. This 2-day overview course goes into somewhat more detail than the 1-day. And the one main big difference is that we break the actual investment process into its 3 natural stages, being that of finding the investments, making the investments, managing the portfolio, and then exiting it. So the 4 key stages. And those are broken out so you can go into a lot more detail to understand how private equity funds really work. And then there's something more on the portfolio management. So this is also a very good course for the managerial kind of a segment of the market, but it gives 2 days and gives them somewhat more of an understanding of the nuts and bolts of it, which the 1-day one doesn't really do in so much detail. So this is the first of the 3 specialized courses. And so it's quite suitable for people who are already working in private equity, like a GP team or a private equity group in a sovereign wealth fund or another type of financial investor, or people who've already gone through a foundation course. And so what we do here is we take much more of a deep dive into deal making and deal origination and deal processing. And we do with a lot of emphasis on case studies, role plays, and also on developing negotiation skills, because often some of the more junior people are more analysts and lack some negotiation skills, so this can help a lot with that. This specialized course is about portfolio management, which is the one area of private equity which probably needs the most demystification, and which is the hardest really to explain to people, including people in the financial sector, because often people like investment bankers and accountants and others will understand the deal-making part, which is the entry and the exit. But there's some lack of understanding as to what the fund manager really does during the time he holds the investment as a board member or in other roles. And what we try and do here is take a deep dive, and it's also quite useful for management teams and private equity GPs who may be a bit weak on the portfolio management, which can often be the case when you've got GP teams who come from a more transactional background. So this course is very good at boosting that know-how. One of the things you hear a lot about, and particularly in emerging markets private equity, is regarding difficulties with exits. So the importance of having an exit strategy, and many fund managers who have portfolios of companies which they're finding difficult to exit. So what this course does here is it sensitizes people much more towards exits. So it's a real concentration, deep dive in exits, and it looks at it from 3 important perspectives. One is the actual exit transaction, how you manage that. The second is how do you incorporate an exit strategy when you structure the deal on entry. And the third and most overlooked is how do you manage the company or groom the company for exit during the whole of the holding period. This course here is a bit of a one-off in the sense that it's a course on soft skills. So about negotiation skills and about presentation skills. What it's not a VC pitch course, of which there are many, but it's a course designed more for private equity, growth and buyouts and all the gamut of private equity. And what we try and emphasize here is to build confidence in negotiations and in presentations. And what we do here is we use negotiation exercises and video to show people how they look when they pitch and they present. And so it's very, very much video oriented, very much soft skills oriented. And you will find lots of soft skill courses, but this is a soft skill course given by a fund manager. So very, very much focused on what you need for soft skills in private equity. This course here is an online course, so it's designed to be an online course, and for obvious reasons, in 2020 I've given this course a lot because of COVID, clearly. And one of the characteristics of online courses is that it has to be done a bit differently because you can't do the negotiation role plays by putting groups together. And so what we do with the online course is it's structured in a slightly different way, and we get people to do online exercises, and we also make use of YouTube videos to follow up on the concepts taught. And it's divided into 3 sessions of 90 minutes in order to allow people to sort of digest it more easily, because online teaching is more of a challenge, and there's no doubt that it is, face-to-face is obviously preferable, but this online course does a pretty good job of getting the basic concepts across on a long distance basis. So when it comes to the question of, why choose me as a trainer, so let me give you a few arguments. The first is, let's look at the stats. Numbers always count in private equity. So in the last 5 years, so from the year 2014 to 2019, I've delivered 63 training courses over Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. A total of just under 700 students, an average class size of 11, and then on a scale of 0 to 10, the average rating of my courses has been 8.9. So close enough to 9 out of 10. So a lot of experience to a very wide variety of clients across a lot of geographies. In addition, to go along with the numbers that I've just given you, I thought I'd give it a human touch. So if you go to my LinkedIn profile and look for the recommendations and endorsements section, you'll see these 8 individuals who all attended my course, or 2 of them were actually organizers of courses, and I was taking the role of the expert. And here you can see a summary of what they thought. And so, all very flattering, of course, but it's real. And if you go to my LinkedIn profile, you can find out who they are and what they said in more detail. Okay, so I hope you found all this very useful. I've gone into a lot of detail because I thought that would be quite helpful. And so if you want to know more, please contact me. You can find me on LinkedIn or email me, or you can contact me through one of the training companies with whom I work. So hope to see you soon.